Rain hammered the roof the night Daniel's life quietly fell apart. He rushed up the porch steps, arms full of warm takeout and a small bunch of flowers he had grabbed at the store, hoping to smooth over the argument from the night before. The house in their Seattle suburb was dark, no lamp glowing in the window like usual. When he opened the door, silence greeted him, heavy and strange, like the air before a storm. He called Laura's name. No answer. Daniel walked inside slowly, his shoes echoing against the floor. The living room looked normal at first, but something felt wrong. A framed wedding photo on the wall was crooked. One of Laura's coats was missing from the rack. His heart started beating faster. He went to the bedroom. The closet was half empty. Her dresses were gone. The blue suitcase they used on vacations was missing. The drawer where she kept her jewelry stood open and bare. A cold wave rushed through him. Daniel turned and rushed to the kitchen, hoping this was some strange misunderstanding, that maybe she had gone to visit a friend. But on the counter sat a folded piece of paper. His hands shook as he opened it. "Daniel, I can't live like this anymore. I need space. Please don't look for me." The words blurred as tears filled his eyes. It's just like that. 5 years of marriage was reduced to one short note. He dropped into a chair, breath tight in his chest. The smell of the food he had brought in suddenly felt sickening. He had planned to apologize, to listen better, to promise change. Now there was no one left to talk to. His mind raced through every moment of the past months. Laura staying late at work, her phone always face down. Short answers, long silences. He had asked her if something was wrong. She always said she was just tired. Now he knew better. Hours passed without him moving. Rain kept falling, matching. The heavy ache in his chest. Memories filled the house, laughter in the hallway, dancing in the kitchen, lazy Sundays on the couch. Now it felt like a stranger's home. That night, Daniel barely slept. The next morning, he called Laura straight to voicemail. He texted. No reply. He drove by her office. Her car wasn't there. Each unanswered attempt tightened the knot in his stomach. Days went by like slow torture. Friends tried to call, but Daniel didn't have the energy to explain. He barely ate. The house felt colder, emptier, like all the warmth had left with her suitcase. At night, he lay awake wondering what he did wrong. Was it the overtime hours? Was it forgetting anniversaries? Was it becoming too comfortable? Shh. He replayed every argument in his head, searching for the moment he lost her. Deep down, a painful truth kept rising. There was someone else. The thought crushed him, yet it explained everything. The secret smiles at her phone, the sudden changes in clothes and makeup, the emotional distance. He didn't want to believe it, but his heart already knew. On the 5th day after she left, Daniel finally broke. He sat on the living room floor, back against the couch, staring at their wedding photo now, lying face down on the table. "I loved you," he whispered into the empty room. Silence answered. That evening, as the sky turned gray again, the doorbell rang. Daniel wiped his eyes, annoyed at whoever chose this moment to visit. He expected a neighbor or maybe a delivery. When he opened the door, he froze. Standing there was Margaret, Laura's mother. She looked smaller than he remembered, wrapped in a light coat, her face lined with worry. "Daniel," she said softly, almost afraid to speak. "I'm so sorry to come without calling." For a second, he couldn't talk. Of all the people to see, he never expected her. "Please," she continued, "may I come in?" He stepped aside and let her enter. The house felt awkward with another presence after days of silence. Margaret glanced around slowly, her eyes landing on the half-empty coat rack and the lonely chair at the table. "She really left," she whispered. Daniel nodded. They sat in the kitchen, the same place where Laura used to laugh over coffee in the mornings. For a moment, neither spoke. Margaret folded her hands tightly, gathering strength. "I wanted to come sooner," she said, her voice shaking, "but I didn't know how to face you." Daniel stared at the table, afraid of what she might say. I think you deserve the truth. His chest tightened. Margaret took a deep breath. She didn't leave because of stress, she said quietly. She left because there is someone else. The words hit harder than any shout ever could. Daniel felt his breath leave his lungs. Someone else, even though he suspected it. Hearing it made it real. She met him at work, Margaret continued, tears sliding down her cheeks. Started as talking, then lunches, then feelings. I begged her to stop before it destroyed your marriage. Daniel clenched his fists. She said she felt alive again, Margaret whispered. She said she was unhappy but never told you. Pain burned through his chest. I tried to remind her of what you built together, Margaret said. But she wouldn't listen. The kitchen felt too small for the truth. So she just walked away? Daniel asked hoarsely. Margaret nodded. She plans to be with him, the words echoed. In his head like thunder. All the late nights, all the distance, all the lies. Now it finally made sense. I'm so sorry, Margaret said, reaching for his hand. You didn't deserve this. Daniel didn't pull away. For the first time since Laura left, someone understood his pain. I failed her, he whispered. No, Margaret said firmly. She made choices. Love isn't perfect, but it doesn't run away either. Her words settled in his heart like a small light in darkness. They talked for a long time about Laura's childhood, about the early days of the marriage, about how people sometimes chase excitement instead of loyalty. Outside, rain slowed to a drizzle. Before leaving, Margaret stood at the door, eyes full of sadness. You are a good man, Daniel, she said gently. And good men don't deserve to be left this way. As the door closed behind her, Daniel stood in silence again, but this time with clarity. Laura hadn't left because he wasn't enough. She left because she chose someone else. And deep down, Daniel felt that this painful truth was only the beginning of a much bigger change in his life. Margaret didn't disappear after that first visit. 2 days later, she came back with a small bag of groceries and a tired smile. Daniel let her in without a word. The house still felt empty, but her presence softened the silence. They sat at the kitchen table again. Sunlight came through the window, touching the empty chair where Laura once sat. I couldn't stop thinking about you, Margaret said quietly. You shouldn't go through this alone. Daniel nodded. His eyes were red from another sleepless night. She made tea and placed a cup in front of him. The warmth felt comforting. In his cold hands. Laura called me, Margaret said after a pause. Daniel looked up fast. She's with him now, Margaret continued. She says it feels exciting. She says she's finally happy. The words cut deep, but Daniel stayed calm. Did she even ask about me? He whispered. Margaret shook her head slowly. She thinks you'll understand one day. Sad laugh escaped Daniel's lips. Understand betrayal. He said, understand being replaced. Margaret reached across the table and held his hand again. She doesn't see clearly right now. She's chasing feelings, not thinking about the damage. Daniel stared at the steam rising from the cup. I gave her everything, he said. I worked hard for us. I planned our future. I know, Margaret said softly. You were always kind to her. Tears finally fell from Daniel's eyes. I wasn't perfect, he said. But I loved her. That should have been enough, Margaret replied. They sat quietly, letting the pain breathe. After a moment, Margaret stood up. Come, she said gently. You need fresh air. They walked down the quiet street together. Leaves moved. In the soft wind, kids played somewhere far away. Life was still moving, even though Daniel felt stuck. You know, Margaret said slowly, Laura grew bored easily as a child, always looking for something new. Daniel listened. She loved excitement. Margaret continued. But she struggled with stability. I hoped marriage would change that. Daniel swallowed. I thought love was enough, he said. Love needs effort, Margaret replied, not escape. They reached a small park and sat on a bench. I feel like my life ended, Daniel admitted. Margaret turned toward him. No, she said firmly. This chapter ended. There's a difference. Her words stayed with him. That evening, they returned to the house. Margaret cooked a simple meal, the smell filling the rooms with warmth again. Daniel ate for the first time properly in days. Thank you, he said quietly. You're welcome, she smiled. Before leaving, Margaret looked at him with care. I'll check on you tomorrow. And she did. The next day. And the next. Each visit brought comfort. They talked about work, about memories, about life before pain. Daniel began to sleep again. The heaviness in his chest slowly eased. One afternoon, Margaret brought old photo albums. These are from Laura's childhood, she said. They flipped through pictures of birthday parties, school days, family trips. She was always smiling, Daniel said. She still is, Margaret replied sadly. Just in the wrong direction. As days passed, Daniel stopped checking his phone every minute. The hope that Laura would return slowly faded. Instead, peace began to grow. Margaret's kindness felt like medicine. One evening, as the sun painted the sky orange, Daniel finally asked what had been sitting in his heart. Did she ever say why I wasn't enough? Margaret took a deep breath. She said you became predictable. She admitted that life felt too calm. Daniel nodded slowly. So she traded love for excitement. Yes, silence hung between them. That excitement won't last, Margaret said softly. It never does. Daniel looked toward the sunset. I would have fought for her, he said. I would have changed. You shouldn't have to beg to be chosen, Margaret replied. Those words healed something deep inside him. Days turned into a week. Daniel cleaned the house, opened the curtains, let light in again. Margaret helped him rearrange furniture, making the space feel new. Fresh starts matter, she said. One afternoon, Daniel received a short message from Laura. I hope you're okay. Nothing else. No apology, no explanation. Daniel stared at the screen, then slowly placed the phone down. He felt nothing. That's when he knew something inside him had shifted. He wasn't waiting anymore. That night, Margaret noticed the calm on his face. You look lighter, she said. I am, Daniel replied. I finally understand it wasn't my fault. She smiled proudly. You're healing. They sat quietly, listening to the evening sounds. Margaret, Daniel said after a moment, why are you doing all this for me? She hesitated. Because I lost someone I loved once, she said softly. And I know how lonely pain can be. Daniel felt warmth in his chest. You saved me, he said honestly. She shook her head. You saved yourself. I just reminded you of your strength. Their eyes met for a long moment. Something deeper than comfort passed between them, a shared understanding, a quiet bond. Not romance. Not yet. A connection. And neither of them knew that this connection would soon grow into something that would change both of their lives in ways they never expected. The past was breaking away. A new story was slowly beginning.